You're listening to the TWOBUCKS podcast, the podcast for outdoor entrepreneurs.
Little by little, I was getting the sense of my time isn't my time.
Just kept feeling this pull to the outdoors and wanting to do something in the outdoor space.
Welcome back to another TWOBUCKS podcast episode. I'm your host, Brian Krebs, and I have today on the line, some people would call a Minnesota fishing legend, Brian Brosdahl. How are you doing tonight, Brian?
Hey, good. I just got off the ice, so I was racing over the woods and through the trails and hoping no deer would jump out, and I made it.
Yeah, well, that's the deer thing, especially where you're from, up north of Minnesota, not quite as many of them, but they're everywhere. Down here, we have a lot more deer, but you can kind of tell, if you're in a danger zone or not based on what you're driving by.
Well, yeah, if you want to get into deer hunting, probably go south. Don't go north, because if you want to take pictures of things with teeth and fangs out there that eat deer, we have lots of them. Some have short bobtails. Some have like big dog bushy tails, and others have long lion type of tails, and that's not a tail.
No, it's not. I've heard, we've actually got pictures of wolves here at my house. I'm pretty sure we got a picture of a wolf after we moved in this July. And we've had definite pictures of wolves at our family properties in Alexandria, Minnesota. So quite a ways south, and it's concerning.
Hopefully they leave a few. They don't pick their teeth with all of them, but and being said, it's fun watching them because I see them now and then running across the ice and doing things, and it's quite an intelligent animal. A little bit of entertainment when you're in the house, and even seeing them take down a deer. I haven't seen one for quite a few years, but on Leech Lake, you can get far enough away, and you can see it happen. Well, maybe not on the new Leech Lake with all the roads, but in the wintertime, if you're in a quiet spot, you could witness it happening, and it's kind of neat. Anything you see on the lake is kind of cool, and that's what I would tell people. Why do I ice fish? And this is what I said when I was 9 years old. And my sister-in-law said I was an old man in a kid's body. But even back then, I realized that you see things that you don't see anywhere else on the water. And I said it was my excuse to be in extraordinary places.
Yeah.
That's truly what I said at 9 years old. And she said, wow, you're a strange kid. But it is. I mean, when you're out there, you're on the ice.
Yeah.
You see stuff. If you're back in the woods, if you're on a snowmobile trail heading in on the lake itself, the sounds is a little different than open water where you hear the splashing of the waves in the water. There is a certain kind of desolation, a sound that's kind of neat, and it's exhilarating. It's not depressing. It's very exhilarating. I just made that up. But it's a lot of fun. But more than just doing it as a pastime. It's passion. I just love doing it, and my wife loves that too. And it's one of our things. And you know what they say, when a guide has a day off, they go fishing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's when you know you have a good job, when you do it on Saturday.
Yeah, and one of the things I heard one time, we were going to get a pizza at a bar, and my wife asked, where's the bartender? And someone at the bar said he went to get a drink.
Yeah. Well, speaking of ice, how have you been managing this crazy year we've been having?
Besides canceling, in the beginning, I've never canceled trips early ice, and summer's way busier because I do a lot of stuff for internet and media. So my summertime guide trips are more back to back. I need blocks of time for all my list of companies that I'm sponsored by. And if you have sponsors, you got to put in your due diligence. And there's times I'm out there, but it's, I'm out there all the time. And the clients, I really want to get them fish, and sometimes the little buggers, I know they got gestures like one fin is up at me off their back, and they won't bite, but we get them. We just stay at it, and you got to stay adamant when you're after them, and it's fun.
Yeah.
I like catching fish, and I just like being out there. It's all a package. I mean, I don't have to injure everything that's underneath me, but I want to catch quite a few.
Right. And so like down here, by the Twin Cities, we had some early ice. I wouldn't say a lot. I mean, I don't think it was the earliest ice we've ever had, but maybe average. And I got out a little bit. Mid-December, we finally had safe ice. And then over Christmas, we watched it all disappear like in a day. Mille Lacs opened up. The lakes by my house I was fishing opened up. Everything opened up to open water. And I don't know how far north that went, but obviously everyone saw all the commotion on red with the weak ice, and then the wind broke it off and people were stranded. So have you had to, kind of finagle your way around and had to deal with some thin ice here as late as January, or is it kind of passed you guys by?
Right now I've got my trails, and let's say I'm not going to just go ramble off on a spot.
Right.
Everywhere I've been, I've drilled, and I've re-drilled because we had a real big cold snap, made a lot of ice up here, 8 inches of ice, and then we had 40-degree weather and rain. The rivers rose, the creeks rose. There was water in the cracks, 8 inches of ice. Using a sled, going places I already drilled. Some of the ice didn't move. Others, you'd see water moving in the cracks. And so then we got cold, but right when we got cold, we got snow that blanketed over everything. And there was vent holes all over. There was vent holes on Cutfoot, Cass, Pike Bay of Cass Lake had a big vent hole. Bemidji, you name it. Cabacona was wide open. Leech Lake, Walker Bay, and nothing to really mess with. And it's crazy how many people have been claimed, people who are experienced ice anglers, and not for the faint of heart. I go by my truck, and for a long time I went by my side-by-side looking at, oh wow, that's so warm in there on the way to the spot. No, I was on my knee with someone behind me on my snowmobile, pulling people behind that on a trailer. And so 4 miles, and I don't like to sit down with my rear end next to someone's crotch, so I sit on my knee. And man, I did 100 miles on my knee for a few days there, but I've never canceled trips, but I canceled them because your clients could just walk around and then hit a hole that's under the snow, or stuff happens, and I don't need that right now. I just want to take people on trips, challenge myself, and come up with concepts for lures and things like that, and do this. And so now we're up to side-by-side traffic. I'm using my side-by-side where I've been, and I've got more ice, or I should say ice that I normally would drive on, but this year is weird, and I see people going all over the place. All you got to do is find the spot. And just a few days ago, they found 6 inches of ice on almost every one of the lakes somewhere. And you find that little pocket, and you got a big expense on your hands. You might get out, it might go down slow, or you could die, So, but my thing is, I will continue to load machines, and I see trucks driving by me, and we got a machine, never drilling, never checking. If you're driving slow, like it's going to help, or going really fast, water's moving up and down the holes, and they're driving out on 13 inches of ice on a road, and then it goes to 12, then 11 and a half, and they might stop somewhere and it's 14 or 15, but it just seems like nobody wants to check anymore. And if you got a side-by-side, use it. If you got a snowmobile, and it works for you, better, because you're spreading the weight out, and that throttle, when you hit it on a sled, if you got studs on your tracks, you're out of whatever you're in. And I had an ice rescue one time where I came up on a sled, and the guy was trying to stay up on the ice. His machine was in his four-wheeler, and he was waving, and I turned, and I started going down, but on a sled, you hit the throttle, and you throw the shards. And I got to some firm ice, and then I threw him a rope and got him out of there. And I'm not going to embarrass him, so I'm not going to say his name, but he got his machine out right away. He brought a boat out there. But anyway, long and short of it, we don't need any more ice rescue. And I'll rescue you, but please don't get in that situation.
Yeah, that part is scary. And we just had Matt Waldron on the podcast Monday night from Crappie Chronicles. And those guys, I'm sure you've heard of them, but like they're struggling with it too. And they had to, really change up all their plans. Fortunate for them, they don't have clients like guide. They're not doing guide service stuff. So they can be a little bit more flexible with like, hey, we can't go today. Let's go tomorrow, or let's go to this lake instead of that lake. But it definitely is it's a winter for the memory book for sure, with how, I can't ever remember lakes freezing and then opening up on Christmas Day. And I'm not very old, obviously, but it's still, we grew up on a lake. So I remember like once the ice shows up, yeah, you got to be a little careful, but it's usually like there for good. I mean, this is Minnesota, not, Kansas.
Well, and the ice, even the thickness we have, isn't like ice in past years.
Right.
We're seeing people go through a lot of experience, and it's there's bubbles under the ice. There's big bubbles, the size of a pillow. There's before the snow came, I seen areas that look like if you shook up a bottle of 7-Up everywhere, bubbles all over the place from the wind and the way the things froze. And you know what? It's not the end of the world. Go, but just do a little extra work.
Yeah.
Razor some holes, as I always like to say, because it with the drills, like a razor, it's so easy just to pop a hole and measure, and we can't see cracks. Cracks give you a clue, because when they weld back together, you get that crack. You can follow along it. It's like a never-ending drilled hole.
There's nothing more comforting than pure black ice with a 12-foot or a 12-inch crack that you're like, and you're walking. You're like, I'm safe.
That sounds terrible. We just said we were following cracks, but anyway,
it's a Minnesota thing.
It's a Minnesota thing, and
people from the South won't get it.
They won't get it in a pressure ridge.
Yeah.
When a pressure ridge is sitting like this, you can see how thick it is right there. There's so many clues you can look for. If you're not experienced at ice, read everything before you go. We ain't going to go into the hour, 40 minutes of ice safety here. There's a wealth online about it, but when you get into these little clues, or when people drill holes, the higher the volcano, the more ice there is. And but that's you're out there. But outside of that, let's just say there's some vehicle traffic, but some resorts are letting people out, some aren't. And in my area, so one end of the lake might have 14 to 17 inches of the ice. The other end has 13, and I'm finding 11, 12. So we're all good with machines. Like, the machine thing is great.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of you out there, and I feel bad for the wheelhouse people, because I know if you go up to red one more time, you're going to turn red, because you want to try something else, but it is what it is. And but the resorts are doing the work to check it, so that's why you pay the fee.
Yep.
And it's very taxing now to own a wheelhouse, I could tell you that. And you just can't go to any public access, because unless you want to do the work.
If you had on a normal year, and if we, some years by now we've got 2 feet of ice. I mean, if you've got a 1 ton with a snowplow and a wheelhouse, you can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, and that's just it. And the lakes are getting some major rest, and they needed it, because in my area, when red goes slow, it's like an evacuation. The whole area just fills up, and great. I hope everybody has good fun and good luck. But it's the fish don't. If you go hammer a bunch of fish and you take them out, they don't magically show up the next day. A 12-inch perch takes many, many years. They don't just like, tomorrow there'll be more. What do you mean there's more? we can't 3D print them. You know what I'm saying? They need time to rest, like in the wintertime when I've always picked on them. I know this is the time that they get to rest from us in the boats. And but you really can't. You could chase them down. And I'm sure what those crappie guys are doing, they're chasing them down with the forward viewing, but you're only going to chase so much in foul weather, and with old people following you or whatever. There's still a time you got to go fishing. And I think that most of the people that I run across want to fish. And I've heard it said really well, many times the same saying: by the time you're done chasing them, you've drilled just as many holes as you would if you just fish and then drill a few and then fish and then drill a few. So we've become more efficient, but we've also kind of gone in a circle, and
Right.
are you going to catch crappies faster? Yeah, make it crappies, but you still got to when you got bottom dwellers like big jumbo perch and walleyes that are laying still, and if you don't have 360, you might not see them. That little flame or snail or whatever you're seeing and whatever you're using,
Yeah.
it's obvious what I'm using. But I can see fish at the bottom when they're moving. It's like, game on.
Right.
Go over there, drill a hole, but then they move. In lakes like Cass Lake, you drill a hole, they swim away.
Yeah.
And then you watch them, they swim till you can't see them anymore. And then you drill a hole and they keep swimming. Then pretty soon you don't see them anywhere. They're forward viewed to death out there. They get chased every direction from the tournaments keep coming there, and they're getting familiar with that beam.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about using 2D and using the the mega, that mega beam, because if they get shy, throw the 2D down. It's all in one. And so I don't think people talk about that enough, that just a little clicking sound sometimes better than a sounding like Neptune's submarine coming at you.
Well, I told the story on the Chronicles podcast, but the technology I'm using is an FL8 that I found upside down on the side of the highway when I was 15, and
Wow.
I'm 29, and it was old when I found it. So, and I'm still using. That's what I use. That's what I got is an old
Oh my
FL8.
gosh.
The deucer doesn't work very good anymore. Sometimes I got to whap it a couple times and put it back down the hole, and it turns back on. But
Wow, you come help me cut some wood. There, you might go home with something better than that.
I got a lot of wood to cut. I've got up at the farm. We got a wood problem, and so I just got a steel 291, and that thing likes to eat.
It likes to eat. I have all kinds of chainsaws. I got Steels. I got Huskies, and every time, that's a nice thing in the winter. I hardly ever have to cut. But in the summer, we get these super dynamic storms that just come ripping through, and I'm like, you get off the lake, you're waiting for your skin to stop glowing and throbbing, and then you look out there, and it's they're laying all over the place, and some of these are gigantic, but it's kind of fun. If you could just cut it and then burn them right there, it'd be fun too. But the best thing about ice fishing too, for everybody thinking about ice fishing, you've never ice fished. We don't have any mosquitoes. We don't have any wood ticks,
and generally no sunburn.
No sunburn.
You get a little windburn if you're fishing outside.
I could have taken you last week when it was windy and it was bright sun, so you had snow blindness.
Yeah, and
I could have oranged you really quick.
Yeah, I've done that before, snowboarding, and but yeah, I snowboard with sunglasses on instead of goggles, and yeah, you'll still get raccoon eyes, but it's from the wind usually, the cold and the wind, but yeah, no, it's a great time. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, so you said back when you were a kid, like you knew right away you were hooked on the outdoors. Oh. And a lot of us are, like growing up in the Midwest, Minnesota especially, there's so much opportunity to get in the outdoors. But do you remember the moment where you were like, no, I don't think I'm going to go get a job and fish on the weekends. I think I'm going to fish during the week and make this my job?
Yeah, I decided when I was in college, and I was kind of thinking about, I want to be a chemist, because, solutions don't argue at you, and just figuring stuff out. And then I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to fish every day. And you know what? I got to make money to live, so I'm going to be a guide.
Okay.
Then I found out that generally the people are really cool, and there's only a few people that are clinically insane that get in my boat. And they're kind of fun too. You never know what's going to happen. And they probably think I'm insane after all these years of guiding, and never was super busy in the beginning because everybody wants walleyes. I was kind of, fishing for bluegills. And ever since I was a kid, my dad had me throw back big bluegills, anything over 9 inches. He said, they're really old, and if you take too many, the lake never comes back. So that's the upbringing I had. He had no science on it.
You're right.
He just seen lakes get wiped out. And people really thought that was crazy. Oh, that's dumb. Why don't you just fillet it? And So I had to listen to that. So, but for many years, but becoming a guide, I would guide people for bluegills, but make them throw the big ones back. And then I started realizing it's one and done. They found that spot, they're going back there. So anybody guiding for bluegills, they're coming back.
Yeah.
They will come back. I have someone I showed a spot to 28 years ago, and they have the same old beater boat and that same anchor that's full of mud and weeds, and they just make a big mess everywhere they go. But a good thing they probably don't have it quite dialed in. They don't get them all the time. But anyway, so trying every avenue and putting up cards when I started was not easy. There was no internet.
You're right.
There was no cell phones. You talk to people when you got home. You put up a card, it's gone because someone else is in that area. You get a little note. You want flat tires if you come back here. And it's not like that now. You put up a website, you give it a name, and all these people can see it right now.
Right.
So I like the hard knocks because you had to have bad days. But anyway, I found out walleyes are just simply the best. That's how you make a living because everybody wants walleyes.
Right.
And there's a few of us crazy people like bluegills, but now after all this many years, I don't want to guide for bluegills. I'm selfish. I want to keep them for me. If I find a big pile of giants, I want to go out and catch them. I want to hug them. I want to smell them. I want to bite them just a little bit and then let them go gently. I love them. I love them, and I don't want to. I don't want to wipe them out. I mean, I can't remember the last meal of bluegills I had. I think it's been maybe 2 years, and they're okay to eat. I mean, go ahead and eat them. Not over 9, please, unless you want to mount it. But which is really good. But that's the one thing I've really been cautious on. And then I ain't gonna say that about every single species of fish. I think that's the one that really we've kind of seen get decimated extremely fast. And
Right.
In a lot of those good trophy lakes that we have around Minnesota, the last 10 years have been just annihilated. And then, but crappies, they get hit hard.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
And I think they kind of have the similar plight. So I think like the crappies and the sunnies are an everyman's fish, right? The walleyes, I mean, you have to be patient. You have to be willing to you sit there all day and maybe not catch any fish. But what's interesting about like big pike, big muskies, big walleyes, no one keeps the big ones.
No. Well, and like this one,
unless they want to mount.
Now you see that one there?
Right.
That one came up in about the last 10 years. I've had only 2 fish have a heart attack. One was in a tournament, and it was a 15-incher. It's like it was only down maybe 15 feet, and it just came up dead. And that fish came up dead, and that was 28 feet. And they're usually more resilient. Every lake's a little bit different.
Right.
And I'm not eating it. I'm not going to eat that. I killed it. I'm going to look at it and have the memory.
Right.
But that's the only way I would have that. With those perch there, they don't look it because of my big fat head, but they're 16 and a half inches long, and Heather cut both of them. So I put them right next to me because I got to catch a bigger one. And I'm getting close, but I can't beat those perch that she caught.
A 16 is phenomenal. I just caught a 12 on Mille Lacs last weekend, and that starts to look big. But perch, I would say probably the same. Like I've filleted a couple 23s and 24-inch walleyes in Canada every now and then when we're trying to catch our last over or something. And even at like 23, 24, you're cutting through bones and stuff. You're looking at this fish and you're like, this is a dinosaur. Like I can't imagine what filleting a 30 would be like. But the sunnies, crappies, and perch, people catch a 14-inch crappie, they knife it. People catch a 10-inch sunny, they knife it. And now it's finally nice to see people like you and the Chronicle guys are on the same page. They're saying when we want to eat crappies, we keep the 10 to 12s. Anything over 12, we always throw back because that's what keeps the gene pool strong. And it's becoming, it's kind of like the Booner buck, the QDMA, thing where everyone, 15 years ago started thinking it was cool to do QDMA and shoot does and let little bucks go. And it started to take on. I feel like we're starting to do that again with our fisheries, letting, bigger trophy fish go so they have the genes to really sustain the lake. And it's funny how those 3 species, the big ones are the ones everyone wants to keep because they finally have a little bit of meat on them.
Well, look what they called them. I always, I've been saying this for 3 decades. They shouldn't be called panfish. They should be called photo fish. Oh, I got another photo fish.
Yeah,
Because
it's
you
not
call
dinner
them
plates.
panfish, now you got to eat them, and everything had to do with food. But
Yeah.
look at the times. Now you could just order a meal and they'll portion it out, and you could have like who knows what you can get in your mailbox now.
Right.
But back then they ate them.
Yeah.
Somebody would have 3, 4, 8 kids, whatever. They got a farm and they need labor. And so they had to feed them. And you know, it's different now. It's
Yeah. It is.
and one of the reasons in the wintertime I like to start for perch, and then we go for walleyes for the hour of power. Instead of sitting there trying to grind walleyes out all day, chasing, drilling. What do I do? Do I follow you while you drill holes? I'm like, no. You sit down there and fish. And people are like, I don't see nothing. Put your lure down there. Oh, here comes something. And I hear it all the time. And I'm like, you're thinking of someone else. I already know there's fish here because I've been here.
Right.
I'm not going to just toss a coin and have you follow me across the lake drilling. That's no, we don't do that because we got machines, we got stuff, and the fish are here because there's bloodworms are just crazy over here right now, and they're just gorging on them, or the crayfish dumped down here on this mud here, this not
Right.
the real deep stuff, and so it's different for everybody. But I like to find fish if I don't have time, I'm still not gonna. You're just gonna chase them out of the area, but if we're not fishing crappie, so we're not looking for schools of fish up in the air like everybody gets to do. We're
Right.
chasing fish. So for me, tomorrow I'm bringing a 360. I'm going to see if I can see where they're laying on the bottom. And I use side imaging in the summertime all the time. I don't think 360 gets used enough. And when we're pitching at fish and they kind of stratify, they get scared, or too many clients cast to one spot, I'll look at 360 and they're like right there behind us, but not quite in view. And you can only turn and look so much, but you're fishing fish now. You're not fishing for fish. You're fishing fish, and that's what it is in the boat too. But sometimes fish could be tough to catch. We have a perch explosion, as you might have seen when you went up to Mille Lacs. Every lake in northern Minnesota looks like mosquitoes all over your lure. Everywhere you go, any depth you go to, looks like bugs all over the place, and they're little perch. If you jig too hard, you'll snag one. And there's spot-tail shiners all over the place. With the water laws, they're not getting trapped like they used to. Be able to get spot-tails all the way in the middle of summer. And I know we got to protect the waterways, but doggone it, there's so many minnows out there now. The fish don't have a reason to eat, so we have to play with them.
Yeah.
And these aren't jumbo perch. These are young of the year perch, as the DNR would call them. And so we have several year classes, young of the year perch, and there's kind of a commonality between multiple states in the region and Mille Lacs, because I don't guide on Mille Lacs, but I go down there for photo shoots, and there's wonderful fish. And you're going to see me. I'm going to drive by 1,000 lakes to come down to Mille Lacs, and I'm going to fish for these little striped creatures later this year. I'm going to make sure I got time because I've always loved fishing out there, and you can catch a perch of a lifetime. You could get these. They're in there. And they didn't magically just show up. A food source changed, and now they're biting. And I think all those little micro perch everywhere, they didn't grow up to those big ones like you caught. They take years. I mean,
Right.
A fast growth perch in the Dakotas is 6 years to 12 inches. Minnesota, they average about an inch a year. So maybe a little less, a little more. There's a lake up here that they'll grow in 7 or 8 years. And without, like when they take the scale samples and all that stuff, that's one way. But you just see the classes coming up. I see the classes and I go, yeah, that was this year, that 1 year, and now they're this big. And so Mille Lacs is not overnight. So a food change, because all these little perch are starting to eat the bugs, and they're showing up. I'm coming down there, and I'm going to be throwing my bro bugs at them.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of them, and we were sight fishing them even in 14, 15 feet of water. It was so clear because of the mussels. And yeah, no, it's fun. The little ones, you're like, yeah, you want to try to target the big ones. I don't fish enough to put the consistency and actually, target big perch. I'm more of just like cast a wide enough net and I'll catch something good. That's the way I fish, but I don't get out as much. And I admit it. Like, I'm not going to either. I'm a whitetail fanatic. I'm an elk hunter. I've instead of fishing on Sunday, I was brush hogging trails through our property. You know.
That's I understand. There's hook and there's bullet guys. I'm a hook guy and you're a bullet guy, but I do like hunting. And once in a while I'll get lucky and I'll snag a good one. But I'm hunting on the edge of the big woods.
Right.
There's 19 different stands and hunters that come in every year, and there's more than that all around me. So for me to even actually have a chance at anything is pretty cool. But I love the concept of it, and I like everything about it. Good hunting land is a very, very rare commodity. You need size, you need food, you need the groceries to grow the racks, and that's kind of the same for some fish like perch. Jumbo perch don't exist everywhere. You go to if you go like to Ottertail, there's big perch in Ottertail Lake, but a lot of the little lakes around there,
Right.
they just don't get big. There might be a few, that make it, but you get to lakes like Leech, they get big. You go to Mille Lacs, they get big. If they get left alone for, a decade, you're going to have big perch. But then different year classes, as some target perch get cropped off, like 4 years ago was a real heavy, intense pressure time for Leech Lake perch. They really got nailed, and I've seen a lot of people on them when they're biting. Well, now those smaller ones that you're throwing back are coming back. So you're going to see some 11, 12, 13-inch perch with a ripped cheek. And so that's a nice thing about perch. Their year class recruitments and the waves of different sizes as they grow replace each other. That's why I pick them. They're very prolific to fish for.
And they are delicious.
They're wonderful, but you go back before I started guiding years ago, and there was in Minnesota that was a trash fish, and
you used to use their eyes as bait. My father-in-law was telling me that way back before it was outlawed. If you caught a perch, two people would take out the eye, and then you had two pieces of bait. You could catch another perch with each one, and he said that, and they kept they're all eaters, but he said that was the best bait ever. Now you can't do it anymore. But yeah, just like you said, they'd start with maybe a dozen minnows, and by the time the dozen were gone, they had enough perch to use perch eyes.
Well, and that's just it. The perch eye is a tough thing, and I've never been able to use them here because of it was probably a law made by a bait shop. But here's one of my
oh
deer.
My gosh,
it was a beast, and let me tell you
that's a
something.
huge deer.
I'm still out of breath.
Dragging it.
Yeah, and everybody says, "Did you get it on your land?" Like, I'm going to tell them. It might be not far away, but if I got him here,
wow.
And that's a wild. So I don't get them like you do, but they're once in a while a big fatty walks through and got decent horns. Now that on your land would have thicker tine. The tines would be thick, but you seen how straight they were?
Yeah.
That thing would be a monster if it had the groceries you're putting out there. But this one lived on pine needles and probably ate some bird feeders off a stick somewhere. But
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I'm sure he did. But
I didn't get anything like that.
Great buck.
That was last year, but this year I took an 8-pointer. We love eating deer. We love venison spaghetti, venison chili. We like venison hamburgers with no beef.
Right.
We just love the texture, and when you mix it with other types of food, you don't have to kill it. You know what I mean? And so anyway, getting back to fishing. So all these perch are going to help us. So I talked to different resorts of where the wheelhouse thing was on Winnie. I went and hit, and they said lots of people complained they didn't get any fish, or the fish would just swim up and swim away, not even interested. Some people said we killed them, and 12 fish in 3 days is not killing them. But they throw in the kitchen sink at them, and they're full. And some of the fish are really proportionate. They look like something out of the Great Lakes. Super healthy, but as these perch get bigger, their demands get bigger. They're not going to eat those little tiny bloodworms and all this. They're going to cannibalize, and the walleyes are going to go nuts. So I'm predicting either, I don't know if it's already going to happen this summer, either this summer or next summer. It's just going to be on fire everywhere.
I have to break out my 18 Ps again. Yeah.
It'll be good.
So
And,
when you started guiding, and you said it was kind of slow to begin with because you did the word of mouth thing was really the only way you had, and now it's different. You have media, you have social media, websites.
Mhm.
But when you started guiding, because you've also done a fair amount of guest starring, guest hosting, different appearances on TV and media. What when you were going through it, what was like the breaking point to be getting into those spheres, either the networks or just, being enough of a presence in the fishing industry where people were starting to take notice and say, "Hey, bro, will you come on the next episode?" What kind of what clicked and like what happened in those years that it went from just guiding to now we're guiding and I'm making appearances, I'm doing media, people are inviting me to do all these different things, work with all these brands, because I'm assuming it's not a straightforward like if I have 200 clients this year, they'll just put me on a TV show.
now you know, I know that in tournaments you got to keep winning. If you don't
Right.
win, you don't get paid, and you don't get the sponsorships. And I did tournaments, but that was more like fun. It was a vacation with a little bit of stress. When it comes to weigh-in time, that's what I called it, and I never wanted to do that. But as far as being a promoter in this stuff, I didn't see myself doing that. I thought of myself as not being like outlaw Josie Wales, but I thought about being this guide out there, like the Grizz. You just live in peace, and then it just started happening. And then next thing you know, someone needed something. But I'd say that I've done well over 400 shows,
Right.
maybe 500 shows, and people need people who fish. They don't have time to look for them. They're not from this state. They're not from this whole area. They might be from down south, and there's a lot of TV shows out there, and they need people to fish. But I would say that your consistency really pays off. I had a good track record, and still, super thankful. I don't think I deserve it all the time, but I'm very thankful. And then finding your way into getting to know different companies like Northland Fishing Tackle. Oh, this is probably 25 years ago. Is it? Dwayne Peterson believed in me enough to give me my first cash contract, and when I signed it, I went home thinking he just said, "This is legit. Can you be faithful?" And I said, "Of course. I don't need to use anything else. So I had to put my other stuff away, and even back then I was using things that you rip in the summertime, but never showed anybody who talked about it. But so I said, yeah, I could do it, but I don't have to sign this. You could just get me some tackle here and there, and I'll tell people. He said, no, we want to make this legitimate. And I never read it, and then I got home and I set it on the table, and Heather said, did you this is signed? I said, yeah. She goes, besides tackle you're getting money? And I said, oh really? And I never looked at it, and she goes, and Dwayne did tell me, please read it carefully. It wasn't that much. It wasn't like these 10-page contracts that I get now.
Yeah.
It's a whole book, man. And I like those small contracts. And then I read and she said, could you get some more of these?
Yeah.
And so that's how it all started. And but truly, just be yourself, and do your thing and fish. And I don't think I made too many people mad. If someone cuts you off or fishes by you, you just outfish them and never be mean. Wave and be nice. And I know some of my clients, like in the wintertime, I had one client, he come up all the time, and I had trucks around us and drill around us. And I said, listen, you could just take some of these holes because you're scaring the fish. You're not going to catch them. We're not going to catch them. He didn't come back. He got tired of me being followed and hunted down all the time. And he goes, I just love fishing, but I got tired of it. But I was still nice to those people, and those people hired me.
There you go.
Because they didn't catch anything. And they were asking when I'd leave so they could take over the spot. And you just got to be calm, because if you want to get into guiding, if you're calm, you're going to live longer. People are going to like you. And I know there's people over there that might irritate you, but you meet them later, they might be pretty cool. You just don't know who they are, and some might not be. But you it's different too in Minnesota. One thing I found in Minnesota, all the guides get along. Even the guides that don't like each other, they get along. It's a different deal here. And you
Right.
go other places, they hate each other, like, and they don't get along in some places. And you can't have that. And I think this is a good place to guide. And you get out on Great Lakes, you get into some bigger places, and I think there's so much competition. And even on resorts and roads, fighting for those extra fees, they're all making money hand over fist because they don't own the lake, and they're plowing a road that people go down, and they make huge sums of money in a short amount of time. And everybody should get along because
Right.
everybody wins. But so as a guide, always think of how you could impress people, even if they're trying to move in on you. And there's some, I could borrow this from Pat Smith one time. He calls them Jim Dandies when they pull in, and they are just not nice people, and they want to leave that bad impression on you. Just ignore it. I mean, it's not going to help anything to tangle with a skunk. Don't get in a spraying contest.
That's like the best analogy I've ever heard.
Yeah,
It's not going to help anything to tangle with a skunk.
no, it isn't. And but for the most part, I love it. And so with sponsorships, how can you help more? And you go to the stores. What are you doing here? Well, I'm here to see what you think about this stuff. Here to see what you think about these lures or how you use them. And I did a lot of that stuff without being paid to do it for so many years. And then I got paid to do it. And how far can you go on this much money? Well, I made it to Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, and out to past the Dakotas. I still got to get to Montana, but I've been all over the place to talk to people right there. If I'm promoting a lure or this or that, I want to be right there to show it to them. And
Okay.
that was my philosophy. We kind of took it to the next level. There was a couple of years we hit more than 200 stores, and I'm just an ice fisherman, and then so after a while I was starting to not get to ice fish as much as I like to. So we backed off on that, and we're just trying to do quality stops and visit people because they appreciate it if you come there and tell the story and listen to their stories. Don't just tell your story. Listen to their stories. They'll teach you something. Everybody out there, it's a cumulative thing, and but it's a lot of fun. So just fish, and if you love it, you want to be a guide, do it. And I've helped a lot of people figure out their way. As far as business, you figure that out yourself. I'm not that good at business, but we do good. And now I have quite a few sponsorships and real good companies. I absolutely love who I have, and I have Northland still, as you can see. I got in the hat.
Yeah.
Humminbird, Minn Kota, in Canon as a package. I got Gamakatsu, Sunline, AFCO, Fish Monkey. I've got Amped Outdoors, Lund Boats, Ray Sports Center, Mercury, and the list goes on. St. Croix rods, of course. You can't fish without a fishing rod. That I should have said that right away. And then 7 reels. There's a good stable of sponsors, and I love their stuff, and I will always use it. But that's Humminbird. They've really come a long way, and they're getting challenged all the time. And I think you're going to see some big surprises with their Minn Kota motor that just came out. It's just amazing. I'm excited to use the stuff. And so for ice, I like using a sled, but you need kind of a bus. And I don't have a bunch of people working under me and take 90 people out there. This area wouldn't be that good if we did that. I mean, there's
Right.
not, Red Lake, Lake of the Woods, big bodies of water. They're all taken basically, and you could still fit in there. If that's what you want to do, you could do it. But if you go with me, you get me. Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe in the summertime you might have to be in another boat if you got a big group. But I'm a one-man band, and if I don't feel like guiding, I'll go fishing. It depends on how much work I'm going to do. If the fishing's terrible, I'll go fishing. I'll catch them, but I can't always get other people to catch them. Sometimes the fish are really reluctant, but we've never been skunked. There's times I'll come up and it's really slow, but wow, that bucket sure is heavy.
Yeah.
We're not pulling in nets on a sea trawler here. But
Well, and I don't think anyone really expects that. We did a deep sea, like a Lake Michigan trip one time, and that was kind of fun to catch lots of trout and salmon, and that was kind of the thing because we couldn't get to Canada that year. I don't remember what happened, but we do this family trip to Canada every year on Lac Sewell, which is a big enough lake. It doesn't matter if they know if they hear it.
Lac Sewell has got to be phenomenal through the ice, but it's also got to be dangerous with all that flow.
I wouldn't know because we go in June. We go in the summer. I would imagine it would be an amazing lake. It would probably be a dangerous lake. I don't know how much flow it really has. The main channel gets like 100 feet deep. And so it's a simple equation. The bigger the pipe, the slower the flow. And so I wouldn't know. It would be dangerous though, I bet. I mean, you would want to know what you're doing.
Yeah, it's not going to be really good. You'll get to know where you could go. The locals are going to have trails, but I've been by there so many times. I've never fished it, but I've done tournaments on the next big water above there. Red Lake, I did walleye tournaments, and I've done tournaments on Winnipeg and Red Lake, and a lot of people don't know that. So you got something new out of this podcast. I did it was the Gary Roach Invitationals up there, and did really well. And I had a partner, Larry Snow, and he was called the Snowman. I was the Iceman, and we considered ourselves the cold front. And
and was this an ice tournament?
No, it was open water.
Open water.
And you need 2 nets in a boat like that because you net your own fish unless it's one that's really going to move you forward. A big over, we call them, over a slot.
Yeah.
And then you have your partner net. Otherwise, you're netting your own all day long. I remember one little spot up on Red Lake. The spot couldn't have been more than 100 feet long. And we would go one way. We had a trolling motor in the front and back. We'd go one way, and boats trying to get in on us. So he was pulling us forward with the front trolling motor, and we were just hammering them. And I'd pull them back, and they couldn't get in. And that lake. I mean, there was a conveyor belt of walleyes, and then cold front comes in really bad. So when you do a tournament in Canada, it's an excuse to catch 100 walleyes to get your best 6.
Yeah.
You have to just go through so many. And after that cold front, I think after we had 100 fish the day before we caught and released and then had our weigh fish, we caught like 12 or 13. I'm like, wow, it even slows down up here. So when the weather goes bad, fish don't like it. And they don't like pressure changes. They don't like, the salooner table. Now they got it into apps and there's percentages. If the percentage is low, you'll right away you look over at the pressure, and if the pressure is bad, you might as well just leave. I'm telling you, it is spot on. The only thing that seems to bite in super low pressure are pike, the most reliable fish. If you're a pike fisherman, you don't care what the pressure is, but you do like low. They just get angry, and high pressure, they might relax. They'll rest.
Do you know? I mean, you fish obviously a lifetime more than me every year, but it blows my mind that a fish 30 feet under the water can feel any of these differences. Like when it gets 10 degrees hotter, the lake didn't change temperature in one day, especially 30 feet down. They can't, the wind, and the pressure, we live longer than any fish for the most part. I mean, there's some sturgeon and there's some things out there, but a perch or a crappie for sure. When was last time? I've never went outside and went like, oh man, it must be high pressure today. I can feel it. You know what I mean? But these fish can sense, and deer and everything else can sense the weather. Like they've got, AccuWeather on their phone too. And
they do.
And we don't. That's why I'm just confused. But when it comes to all these changes, have you ever found the reason why they can sense it, or is they just that in tune?
Well, the fish have a air bladder, which is a simple thing that
Right.
when you get high pressure, it deflates it, and when you get low pressure, it inflates it because the weight down on it, changes it. Doesn't have to change that much to change their moods, and uh, if it inflates, then they're not hungry; they feel full, and then so
Oh.
they can feel these changes. And rivers are a little bit different. I think the fish are more muscular. I mean, you look at some of the fish we pull out of heavy current, fast current, they're just stocky. They're just a different kind of walleye. They're boxer kind of looking walleye. And, when we were up in Menaki, some of those fish were just
Yeah.
footballs of muscle. And so they might not be as affected, but different fish act different. And even in smallmouth bass, when you get stable rising pressure, man, it is top water, game on. When you get a deep, dark, sunken in front that comes through, and then rain, and then you get low pressure, they're going to be down in a crack, and that lure's going to go over, and they're just going to look at it like, you're right. You have
So
to get
every
down.
fish is kind of different, you're saying.
Well, no, they all react that way, and sometimes it's just about impossible to get to them. And but if you could put the bait right in front of their face, you can't see them, but they're there. If you could put it in their face, you'll get a reaction. You can't catch them if you don't go, so you got to try. And
That's true.
I've seen some of the best tournament anglers in even in the last year that had really bad catches, and then other people did really well. So I don't. It's you just got to keep trying, and we're going to see a lot coming out of technology. Not just who sees the farthest or who can track the lure the farthest, who's the quietest. I know I can
Right.
with my humminbird in open water. I can stare at fish longer than you can with some of the other brands. They're a little bit louder. They have more power, and how long is that going to last as we're training the fish? But and the real thing is, you know, which one's going to win as far as quiet, because they're feeling it, and that's why even trolling motors going brushless. That's going to be so good for fishing, and everything you do changes your outcome. And there's times when dead sticking. I've been in a tournament where you're dead sticking uh, over the fish in shallow water, murky lake, and they're just barely moving the rod tip. It reminds me of perch fishing in the wintertime. And then other tournaments, you can't rip the bait hard enough, and you get reactive strikes. They come flying through the weeds and grab it. So it's always changing, but you can catch fish every single day. Some days are tough, and if they were all easy, we'd never get good at it.
Yeah, and I think so. Like if someone wants to begin a career in the fishing industry, we had Brad Hawthorne on the podcast, and it's funny you said some of the things earlier. You said like all the Minnesota guides get along because he said the exact same thing. He's like,
Yeah.
we all have our spots. We all know of each other. We're all friends. Like if you try to come in here and like shoulder your way in and act big and tough, like we all talk. And we're gonna, you make one of us mad or you do something stupid to one of us, we're all gonna know about it right away. And because we've built the community, like we're all friends, we all get along, we trust each other, we respect each other. So you're not gonna like pull one over on all of us. You might pull one over on one of us to begin with. And he's like, and that's the way you. So if you're gonna do this, do it the right way. Do it legitimate. Get the, he's one of the things he talked about was get your insurance, get your business entity, do the things that you need to do, and be respectful. Like don't come in here thinking at 21 years old you're going to be the next, Al Lindner or the best big shot. He's like, I started, and I was probably started a couple years too soon when he talked about it. He said I probably wasn't as good as I thought I was when I started.
Some people are good, but it's I think that don't let anybody stop you from fishing or guiding where you want to.
Right.
There's so many people that want to tell you what to do, but there's we all work and get along, but don't let people don't walk in anybody's shadow. and do
Right.
your own thing respectively. And
Yeah,
you
go
will,
out there, have fun. Don't try to like, I think one of the things he was alluding to is like, don't come hire me and then next week start your own guide service and go to my spot with your client. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't work. We all talk. We know it. Like do it the right way. Come join us, be part of the group, but do it the right way. And
I've a lot of clients that are guiding now, and that I've had for many years, and they're all over the place. And I have guides that hire me from other states. They're on their wives have business jobs, and they're here, and they jump in the boat while they're waiting, and I figure it out. You can just tell, and it's fun. I always enjoy it, and I like to
right.
hear reports how they're doing out of state or some other part of the state that I've helped out or they've been my client, and they check in, and it's fun just hearing they
Yeah.
have their struggles. It doesn't matter where you pick, because I know somebody who picked like the one of the best fishing areas, probably catch more fish than you do here, and they're struggling right now because there's a lot of food and the weather's been kind of odd, and so it's fishing.
Right.
You're not guide catching, you're guide fishing, and you might have fish on your zapper, but you still have to make them come into the boat, and that's where learning fishing. The best way to learn is with just take a humminbird helix and go out there and use the basics and catch fish doing that. Then go to the next level. Then know why they're there. If you don't know why they're there, and you're just chasing dots, you're gonna have some. You're gonna have some days that are gonna really kick you, because you got to understand why the fish are in the spots they're in, and I mean that's years of experience help, but just kind of understand them. It'll help you,
Yeah.
and then pick the lakes, the area, and get to know it extremely well. And when we did tournaments in the National Walleye Tour and in the FLW, you'd go to another state, another body of water, and you had to learn it like you're a local. You had to learn it like you're better than the locals because you're competing against local guides. So you had to have that edge, and so you had to really study, and you had to have pre-fish time, um, and not just on the phone. I think that just makes it a little bit. You get preconceived notions, and it's better not to have them.
Okay.
Go there and fish it, get to know it. But you also don't have that much time. If you're lucky and you're getting funded and you could have a lot of time, you got it made. If you only got a lot of times, I would have 2 or 3 days to go to a big body of water. I mean, I'm racing around, and you know, and sometimes I'd end up being the one who didn't make the cut, and I'm in a tournament the next day with the National Guard, and I'd win that. So I'd always say if I had one more pre-fish day.
Yeah. That's the
But
same as the Western hunting. We always want pre-hunt scouting days.
yeah, it makes a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no replacement for knowledge of what's going on, and in situations, from storms to flat, calm days to like you're kidding me, we're not going to catch anything, and then you do right at the last minute. A lot of your clients will understand it, some won't. Don't paint. As I was always told by one of my guide buddies, older one who passed away a long time, Paul Nelson, don't paint the pig. If you paint the pig and put a silk hat on it, they're going to be disappointed. So I'm straightforward with what's going on, and I tell them the truth. Well, what are we going to get? I said we're not going to get zero, but we could catch 1 to 50, and you can't predict it.
Yeah.
You can't predict the weather unless we could learn how to talk to the animals. Loons, for instance, when you see them rafting up and getting ready to leave, you better get some of that cold weather gear out, get ready. And then sometimes, though, lately we've been seeing around the middle of the lakes is they have a food that they like to eat. They like to eat Cisco's, but if they're all rafting up and there's more loons than ever one day on a deep body of water that look like, and they have kind of a Canadian accent, winter's coming.
Oh, really? I never
Well,
thought about that.
They don't have a Canadian accent. I was just kidding.
No, I meant the whole rafting thing though. But like, yeah, I remember one day I saw more loons and I was like, this is phenomenal. Like, there's tons of loons. I don't understand it. I never
Yeah,
paid any attention to it, but
they're moving through. So I'm
yeah.
thinking, my plow's kind of buried behind a whole bunch of stuff, and my snow thrower has weeds growing out of it. So I better get things snapping here.
Yeah, no kidding. One thing I did want to talk to you about before we wrap up, because we are coming on an hour and I want to respect your time, but you've also developed and co-developed multiple different techniques, baits, all kinds of things. So if you've got the means to kind of build them yourself, obviously that's one option. But it looks like you've also partnered with a bunch of companies, and so can you just kind of share what kind of goes into coming up with an idea? You probably mocked it up somehow with what you had and kind of proved it would work, and then working with the brands. But how does that kind of go down for creating a new style or method or bait of fishing?
Well, you could start a tackle shop in your garage.
Right.
You could sell those lures. You could be on the road. You could do all that. I always like the idea of helping other tackle companies come up with stuff, and then I don't want a percentage, because those micro percentages don't add up. I just want to make it and then keep my sponsorship. And it's simple that way. And as far as if I can give them ideas to help, I mean, it's surprising that I didn't name stuff bro this, bro that. John Peterson did. And so he said, if I hang your name on it, if we name it after you and it fails, it's on you. So you're going to make sure it works, So anything you do, I've had fish houses, I've had rods. Now I'm with a brand company, so I don't have so much of that, but I still have the Bro Bug spoon still out there, the Bros Bug collection, a lot of that residual stuff. So you get an idea, no matter where you're at, sketch it out right away. I've had ideas start on a napkin at a restaurant. I've had ideas on the back of a Kleenex box. I've used everything but crayons. I've had ink pens, and now I've got sketch pads, and it starts with that, and then mocking it up with 3D printing and all that stuff. You could have a finished product. In the past, it would take weeks and weeks, to carve it and mold it and stuff, and now it still takes a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But it's amazing, and it's been fun. It's a great thing. I don't want the responsibility of everything that goes around that one product. And people out there who have their own tackle, they know.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Can you get rich? You could. Could you go fishing more? Yes. I like fishing. I want to do other things. I want to use it.
Right.
So I chose that aspect. Help others to help you.
I've kind of taken on a little bit of your guidance, because I'll come up, this will be episode 78. So I've talked to 78 either brands or creators or services, and I'll come up with a bunch of ideas. I mean, I'm an engineer by trade, so coming up with the idea is not the problem. And, I'll come up, like, we bought this house and we started shooting bows together, me and my wife, in the backyard, and we're always like stepping things off, 20 yards, 30 yards. I'm like, it'd be great if we had like a stake in the ground with a flat plate that had a cutout of the yardage, so you could like see the hole, like the grass through the plate, and you just leave it in there. You mow right over the top of it. It's there forever. If you ever needed to move it, you just pull it out. But it's, I know if I go stand on that plate, it's 20. If I stand on this one, it's 30. I don't have to mark anything.
Yeah.
But I'm like, do I really want to spend the time to build that company and then sell these things? So I just give them away now. I hope someone builds one day and then I can buy it, or maybe they'll send me one for free. I don't know. Or like, you're a deer hunter. You probably have a grinder. Well, we do a lot of things that I want like 5-pound batches or 10-pound batches. And I got to like carry 10 of these 1-pound packages out of the freezer. Like, why don't we have a 5-pound hamburger bag?
Yeah.
But I don't want to make it. I don't want to.
Well, pass it on. And
yeah,
I've talked to so many inventors and they want me to find places for them to get their inventions, and I'm like, I just send them. You go talk to them, and you're going to be surprised. It's not worth $1 million. It's not worth 100,000. It's not worth 50,000. It might be worth this good idea you got. Might be worth $3,500. It might be worth $1,500. Might be worth $7,000. It's you got to bring them down to earth sometimes if you make it yourself, and then you develop it, and you have molds, and you have business, and you've got books that show a lot of money. Then it's worth something.
Right.
But an idea, or just part of an idea isn't the same. And so I like to hand it off. And one of the ideas I'm telling people is make something so I could just set my big Otter Pro Resort on there and then lift one in and slide it in. That's what I want. And something that it's small and it folds right up. Or, without having to go all the way to the other side of Canada, make me a snowmobile carrier for my short box that extends out, goes to the hitch, that has a built-in ramp underneath in America. They got the best ones up in Canada, and I'm not going to drive 23 hours to get one. But if someone here had one, I would have bought it from you. You know,
Right.
So it'd be nice to have that. You're still going to get wraparound salt, but you're not going to get the bath on it.
Yeah.
And you don't have a big enclosed trailer in the wind. So there's some ideas out there. So, ATV, everybody's got there's more ATVs than snowmobiles. So, and there's a lot of designs, but they're making them big. They're making them up on top. So how far do you want to break your leg? Up into your hip, knees, and everything else? You go off your tailgate, you're not going to break as many bones. So
Right.
I just want it in between the wheel wells. And you start looking there. So I built one last year, and it weighed like 800 pounds out of wood and this and that. And I'm like, I don't want that. I want one that weighs like 200 pounds or 150 pounds. So there's
you're talking like a sled deck, but more of like a bed deck.
Yeah, one spot. Don't need them. There's some real nice deluxe over the top, and there's cantilever design. No, I just want it down here, right there.
I've seen those.
I want to go check out 5 lakes in a day. Can't do that in open water because you got to wash your boat. So on the ice you can. So the beauty of ice, the beauty of a snowmobile, is you could just cruise. You go all over the place. You go through woods, and you don't need a nice one. I mean, I've had some of the worst sleds known to humankind. I had one leave me stranded 8 miles out and had to walk back pulling my otter. And I remember that time. It was 40 below zero, over 40, 42. And I was with my father-in-law, and he's like, "You're not going to leave your stuff?" I said, "I'm not leaving my stuff out here." It was not in a good area. And I pulled it back, and he helped. And, boy, I tell you what, if it happened now, I'd leave my stuff out there.
I bet. I was going to say 42 below, and you're probably still sweating when you got back to the truck.
Yeah, I was like that song Aqualung, breathing for the next 3 days after that. Yeah, it's but you have something reliable, but there's all kinds of, you can get an old Enticer, you can get an old Polaris, you can get an old Cheetah, anything that runs. You make sure it runs though first, and get an old Phaser.
That was my brother's favorite snowmobile. He had a studded track Phaser.
Yeah, and and then when you can, maybe shave off a little bit of that big expensive truck and get a nice sled. See, I always, my philosophy, and Heather agrees with me after being around, we need a killer boat, we need a killer sled, a killer four-wheeler, and our truck needs to start and just look decent.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a truck that looks good, but it's got 190,000 miles on it. It's only a 2017. I just drive a lot,
Yeah, I got a 2017 with 200 and almost 300,000 on it, and
well, you drive every day. I mean, that's
yeah, I'm all over the place, and that's another thing. I go where we have our best chance.
Yeah.
So if you're on a lake or wherever, that's nice, but never tell the guide where to go. And I have a lot of lessons we've taught. Don't pay me to teach you a lesson. Let me pick, and we will catch fish, because every lake is a different temperature at a different time. So early ice, shallow lakes. In the spring, shallow lakes. Later in summer, deep lakes, because they're the coolest when the other waters are warm.
Yeah.
Following the temperature could be the best thing you could do, chasing the temperature. And so, deep to shallow lakes, make a list. I got the list right here. I'm taking it with me when I go. And, and so, there's always a way to go. So I'll have people that are staying on Cass go to Leech. I'll have people on Leech will go to Winnie. I'll have people on any of those lakes, and we're on Bemidji. Like, what are we doing on Bemidji? It's really good right now, So chase the temperature, and then which lake doesn't have mayflies all over it? We're going to that lake. Why?
Which lake
Because
doesn't, or which lake does?
we find the lakes that don't have them.
Oh, because
The
there's too
deeper
much
lake,
food when they are there.
they hatch later on cooler, deeper lakes. So you follow the temperatures. Which lakes have the shiners still up in the shallows? Which lakes did they spawn and leave? I don't want to go to that one. So
Okay.
there's little tricks you can learn as a guide. And if you don't know that stuff, you better go hang out in a bait shop for a little while. You'll learn a lot just by talking to people. It's pretty amazing.
Would you recommend newer guides? So maybe someone listens to this podcast, they hear, all your excitement and passion for it, and they're like, I want to do it, but it might take me a minute, right? I got a day job or whatever, I got a family. Would you recommend that someone start like small and scoped in, like just get good at maybe one species or one lake to start with before you start going everywhere and trying to chase, flashy objects?
Yeah, my suggestion is, if you like muskies, if you want to throw big, loud lures and drive a fast boat to chase a big fish that bites here and there, that sticks out like a sore thumb on forward viewing, go for muskies. If you want to be consistent and you really want to grow your business, go for walleyes. Bass are huge too now, and tracking down good largemouth, smallmouth bass, you could really stay busy, but you better know your stuff, because the people who can afford to go might be from Texas and they fish every single day retired, or they might be from some place that's like, been in a bass tournament, so you better know your bass. But walleyes, there's a lot of things you can do for that. As far as bluegills, never guide for bluegills. Save them their treasure. If you're guiding for bluegills, they're coming back. I'm telling you, they will be back. And if you got good people you trust, you take them to the honey hole, but you never let them see the full gold. You don't show it all. And then as far as crappies, it's timeliness. If they're in 45 feet of water, I don't want to do it. If they're shallow, it's fun, and you know the people. Go for walleyes. Maybe a little bit of perch and walleyes. Safe. They seem to be prolific in this state. We have walleyes like no other state. They just grow like crazy. Or you can go to Dakotas. Make sure you're licensed properly.
Right.
And Devil's Lake is prolific. Just watch out for wood that's in the water.
Watch out for a lot of things that are in the water in Devil's Lake.
Watch out for a lot of things.
There's barns down there.
Yeah. And what are you going to hit here? I had a guy come from Rainy Lake, and I told him, I haven't been snagged this whole year, just in the weeds a little bit, but I've never been snagged where I didn't get my jig. And he goes, he might as well just throw his box in up there. He's always snagged in the rocks up there, that shield rock. He got a snag that day. So I did everything I could, and I finally got the snag out, and I'm like, how did he find? He must have hooked a log or something. When the logging days, some of the logs sunk. And here's a little something. I always think about this every day as a fisherman. They logged off all the trees in this whole area and floated them down to the cities. So a lot of lakes in northern Minnesota have logs that sunk to the bottom. So what percentage of logs didn't make it out and sunk? Who was in charge of that, and what would that cost you nowadays? There's got to be millions of logs on the bottoms of lakes around here. It's unbelievable. I see it all the time on side imaging, and sometimes in an area where there's, you get a northwest wind all the time, so there's a lot of logs jammed up on the southeast sides and south sides. Look on your side imaging sometime. You'll be blown away. And then some of it's been settled and buried. So when all those people that are in the woods all those years and all these logs are just laying there going to waste, I just shake my head when I see lakes with hundreds and hundreds of logs in full grown, the full size logs, and they're half buried. So there's a few snags, but most of the time it's all sand.
Yeah, and I came of an idea lately. So I don't know if you've heard um, Prairie Sports Radio or Prairie Sports Brett Amundsen's show. He had Uncut Angling on, and they got into the hot topic of crappies and deep water, right? Barotrauma, and you just referenced it. I don't know a lot about it, but from what I gather, if you could get the fish as fast as you can back down to that depth, it has a good chance of surviving. And they've done things in like Alaska off the coast fishing for different species where the species needs to be protected, but you accidentally have some accidental catch, even though you're not supposed to be fishing for them. It's just fishing. And then they've come up with ways where you can put the bladder back in them and get them down to the bottom as fast as you can. And they've got some good science behind it. I'm wondering why we can't design something like the your electronic scale nowadays, where it's got the two claws that you hook the fish's lip. Why can't we hook that with like a 5-pound weight and a 2-pound like trap trigger, and you drop it down, and as soon as it hits the bottom, the jaws open up and your fish is on the bottom, and then you release it at the bottom.
Well, my old tournament buddy who passed away, Paul Nelson, he had those. He had the rockfish release and all that stuff, because we did fish some tournaments where the fish were deeper. And nothing works better, and I hate to knock down $1 million idea, nothing works better than a jig head. Flatten the barb on the jig head, tie a heavy weight on the bottom of the jig head, tie it to the loop of the jig head right here, put it in the lower jaw of the fish, lower him down, then lift up, and the fish swims away. And so you get these jig heads that jig head's junk, it's all rusted or whatever. So use it to poke out eyes of other hooks sometimes.
Yeah.
Take one of those old jig heads, tie in the bend of the hook, this part that goes like this.
Yeah.
Right here.
The bottom of the J.
Flatten the barb, lower any fish down. And weight depends on the size of the fish. Crappie, smaller weight. Walleyes, you might need a little heavier weight. 2 pounds worked for us. And so different size weights.
So you're talking about actually hooking them. Like pinch your barb, but then hook them and...
Yep.
Okay.
You just hook them. They've already got a hole. Just put a little hole in their lip. Don't stick it down in their gills. And lower them down. And if they're relaxed fish, you don't even have to poke it through. Just let it go down if you want to get some kind of clip. But sometimes you'll just be jigging, and you pull them back up. They don't come off. They just go, and then just have a fishing pole, an ice fishing rod with a bait caster on it, and braid. You just drop the fish down and let them go. But one thing they never talked about, and I know they got to look at this, but you get fish that come up and they're just bleeding out of their gills. Their arteries are sticking out of their neck. Their capillaries are burst. And if you fillet that fish, it's pink inside. And how long are they going to live? So, we can say all we want about deep water, but there's not 100% on any of it.
Yeah.
And so why dig around out there? Leave them alone. They're there to rest. They're there to grow. If it's super deep, find something shallower. If that's all there is, fish for something else. I mean, and don't plop a house down, because I've seen this. Plop a big house down in 2 hours, you got it banked, everything's, and you're fishing on a 45-foot school of crappies and just sit there all day. And they all release, and you can get the snow out. Everybody does that. You knock the snow out, you close your mouth and drop it. Everybody's done that. Everybody I know does that, okay? So it's not a new thing. And get them back. And you can watch them on forward viewing now. But, when their arteries are sticking out, they got bloody meat. But then sometimes they live, because there's been walleyes with blotches that people caught pre-fishing in the deepest I've heard is 62 feet of water, and then they catch that same blotchy walleye day of the tournament. That's incredible, in that.
But the walleyes I've heard the difference is walleyes and a lot of other fish can burp and relieve that pressure, whereas crappies can't. Is that not true?
It's lake by lake. There's some lakes that walleyes you're like, well, the lake doesn't have more than 20 feet. And the walleye comes up and he's got a bag sticking out. Not sticking way out like they do if you pull them out of 80, but every lake has a little, reservoirs and all that stuff. I think it depends, but I don't know. They seem every lake's a little bit different. Like Cass is super tough, but I've seen leech lake fish have heart attacks and just come up dead and bleeding, and it's like, and crappies the same. But I drive by deep water bites all the time, and
Yeah.
I'll look out there and there's no one there, and I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
You know,
Safest thing is just leave them be.
leave them. If you open that spot, and there's people who fish fishermen, there's people who fish houses, and people who fish holes, and then there's people who find their own fish, which is probably most of them. But you don't want the other ones to go out there and just rip them out of their maybe deep water sorting. And it's a tough subject. Why bother them? Leave them.
Yeah.
And if you want a meal, just go grab a couple. Are they?
Well, that's what I'm always scared about is you drop down 40 feet and what you catch is a 7-inch crappie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, well, that one wasn't worth filleting anyway, but he's going to die. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I would personally not fish it, because what if I catch one that's not an edible fish?
Yeah, it felt like between the two, there was a little bit of a rant there, and I don't know where that kind of stuff came on, but I've kept fish alive from the 40s, and some of them live better, and you could fizz bubbles out of them, and you don't take them all, and there's little secrets you could do, but that's when I needed to keep them alive for stuff, and if you have 10, you might have 3 that'll make it, and without clip weighting them, they'll tip over, and some fish just die, and bluegills are fragile. They just if you touch them wrong, you feel a little shock, like they just jumped, and then you look and there's a little bubble in the back of their throat. You just got to be careful how you handle them. Don't squeeze a deep water crappie too hard.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a story. My guide buddy Paul, he had someone in his boat all the time that would squeeze the fish really hard, thinking if he kills it, he'd have to keep it, and he would. You just can't make that stuff up. So this guy, he would not let him touch a fish because he would try to squeeze it to death so it wouldn't go away. But yeah, so as far as that barotrauma, I don't know it all. None of them know it all, so don't act like a know-it-all.
Right.
You know what I mean? You might.
Well, it is reassuring that if you find yourself in a situation like maybe you're only fishing 20 feet, but one comes up, it's like, well, at least now I know a couple tricks in my pocket where I can hopefully try to save this fish.
Well, yeah, and you could see them, but you'll see them in the spring too, when the snow melts and the ice gets clear again. On those days where it gets right down there, you'll see them. They'll be floating by, drain holes. Here comes a rotten fish because they rot under the ice. And I've seen on deep lakes where people just went out. Oh, I keep getting these 11.5s, and they want 12s. And there's one lake. The school of fish was untouched for years and years and years, and we knew about it. The wrong people find it, and it's just they bleed their heart out on the internet, and everybody's there, and there's thousands of fish under the ice, and everybody's mad. No, people who fish in that spot, if they go there, locals come out and they get talk to them about it. You're better not throw anything back here. Or one guy said, well, eagles need to eat, and he's open water in a boat. He's throwing back these fish. Someone who lived on the lake scooped up his limit of fish, threw them in his boat at him, and said, get out of here. They're floating. And he's closing their mouth. He's dropping them down. So, some people just don't care. You're not going to win over everybody, but we don't have to be. We could just, That was funny, though, that he did throw the fish in his boat and say, okay, you got your limit. Goodbye.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's kind of sad when you see, I hate releasing a fish and it doesn't make it. And like you said, the only thing that works 100% is to leave them alone.
There's other fish.
Yeah.
There's fish in moderate depths. Do we have to go to the Davy Jones locker on crappies? But yeah, there's more to the death thing there. I mean, there's a lot more going on in there. And even if they swim down, they're swimming down to float up later. We've seen it on a lot of deep lakes where there's just, if you drop a camera in a community hole and on a lake near Brainerd or Mille Lacs or Twin Cities, look at what's under the ice. It's unbelievable. And so find shallow lakes.
Yeah,
And,
go catch some 2-foot river monsters.
Yeah, and that there's no simple answer to it. If it takes a long time to set up the house, pick a different species, or because these guys they had 125 on their clicker, and that area was full of fish under the ice, and they weren't slapping them down. There was no ice in their mouth. They were fishing in a warm house. They're letting them go like we're supposed to, like the Canadians do, and they all came back up, and they're floating under the ice. And those people stopped after I pointed it out to them, and I said, if you're going to come here, just take your limit. It takes a long time to set up a wheelhouse. Well, just take a portable car door out of your truck, fish off your 4-wheeler.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I want everybody to go fishing, but there is no one solution to everything. And that's one thing. If you know it all, you don't really know it all.
The more you think you know, the less you really do.
Yeah. Don't be a know-it-all.
That's some great advice to end on, especially when it comes to starting a career as a guide, is just always be willing to learn.
Try not to just incessantly kill everything. And if you're done with your clients, don't go back on your spot and beat it senseless. Oh man, I clicked off 60 here. Well, if they're eaters, why would you do that? You need those for the people.
Right.
And pretty soon they're only going to be able to have 4 each. So what are you going to do? Just keep sword jawing the babies? If you got a lake that's got nice ones, or a slot lake, that's a blast. That's fun. You get to catch fish and have a good time. But if you're beating up on eaters, that's not, it's a numbers game, unfortunately. And, and some of those, there's percentages, and you don't have to, I don't know. I don't go out of my spots after and beat them up. And if I have multiple trips, I'll hit other stuff. Remember, if you're the doctor, don't take too many pints of blood out of the patient. You'll kill it. So take blood out of different patients, different spots.
That's some good advice.
Yeah, don't go Kevorkian on it,
Do you I feel like you need to start a t-shirt company with all of your sayings on them.
Or like I sketched a thing. Heather always say, "Can you sketch this?" I said, "Sure." So I sketched a deer with his antlers holding them out and said, "Take him now, leave." And a guy with a gun on him with a simple look on his face. He goes, "Well, I kind of wanted the whole package, And
yeah, that'd be a great shirt. Or like the one I loved was like, "It doesn't help to wrestle with the skunk. Or nobody wins." Like.
Yeah, don't get in a peeing match with a skunk.
Yeah, some of these shirts I feel like you would have, and you can do it nowadays. You don't have to do any of the work. You can get your website set up with someone else that'll print them on demand and ship them out. So when someone orders a shirt, you never see the shirt. You don't have to make the shirt. You just designed it.
You're hired. You're my manager now. So
we'll work it out. I'll definitely help you out. Because you got some great T-shirt sayings.
So when my 7-Up has something pour inside of the 7-Up and the rocks here, I'll have more ideas later.
Perfect. We'll get together and start a T-shirt business.
Yeah, but unfortunately, what I got to do is I'm going to go tie some lines and get ready for the morning, because I want to do my best. I want to produce for these people. I want to get them some perch, and they just want to catch some perch. They're not looking for a limit. They want to have good action. Throw some fish back, keep some for a meal, and maybe get a few walleyes. So I got some tying and charging to do. But
there you go.
Yeah,
it was nice talking to you too, Brian. I appreciate you being here today, and I appreciate everyone listening along with us. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, follow your dreams.